In science fiction, we've read of machines that could take a person back into the past, or a machine that could take a person into the future. Hop into the sukkah, and you will enter an atmosphere that can take you to the past, future, and present, all at the very same time. Rabbi Elijah Vilna points out the difference of the mitzvah of Sukkah than all other mitzvos. There are mitzvos that are thinking mitzvos, mitzvos that are action mitzvos. Sukkah is a mitzvah where the person enters into it. You step into it and you're totally enveloped. The Torah says, go into the sukkah, observe in the sukkah, live in the sukkah during Sukkos, l'man yedu dorosechem, so that your generation should know the miracles that took place during those 40 years in the desert. Pesach talks about going out of Egypt and the great miracles. But how do 3 million people survive without food and with all kinds of animals in the desert and the blazing sun? How did 3 million people survive? I protected you in the desert. I built Sukkos. The Talmud says that Sukkos are actual booths, and also Sukkos are clouds, special clouds of protection that we were enveloped in during our 40 years in the desert. The Sukkah is history. The Sukkah is God's protection of the Jewish people. We went into the desert, we were protected. We live our lives in the present, we're protected by Hashem. The Sukkah also symbolizes exile. 2,000 years since we've been exiled after the destruction of the Second Temple, sent from country to country to country. Mighty empires have risen and fallen, and we survive. We continue to survive, and we continue to thrive. God protects us every day of our lives. God has protected us throughout our history. Yakedas Yitzchak, one of the great Torah giants of the golden era of Spanish Jewry. He lived in the 1400s in Spain. He was a great Talmud scholar and a great Kabbalist. He wrote this masterwork on Chumash called Akedas Yitzchak. And he writes about the 5 holidays. And each one is, he says, is a symbol of a major aspect of our belief. Pesach reminds us of God's omnipotence, God's amazing power. There's nothing that God can't do. God's guidance of the world. Shavuos reminds us of the giving of the Torah and our connection to God. Rosh Hashanah reminds us of our free will and the concept of judgment, the concept of accountability for our actions. Yom Kippur reminds us and symbolizes the concept that God cleanses us, gives us the opportunity when we make wrong choices, when we develop not good habits, we can change it. What about Sukkos? He says that Sukkos reminds us of eternity. Sukkos reminds us of this world and the world to come. Sukkos reminds us of God's eternal presence. When a man puts on tefillin and ties the tefillin over around his finger, one of the verses that he says is, "Ve'erastich li le'olam." I will betroth you to me forever. That is our relationship with God forever. Now, forever is just not an expression. I love you forever. Forever means with God eternal, forever. Ashreinu matov chalkeinu, how fortunate are we that our connection to God is eternal, and that we live our life in this world with, of course, accountability, but with purpose, with mission. There's meaning. And in the world of eternity, in paradise, we are blessed based on the quality of life that we lived in this world. All encompassed in the Sukkah, past, present, and future. As a matter of fact, the Talmud says that when the Messiah comes, and there'll be the great the rebuilding of the Holy Temple, resurrection of the dead, there's going to be a great sukkah. And the sukkah will be attended by all the people, the righteous people who have lived their lives during their time on earth in connection and service of God. Let's observe the mitzvah of sukkah. And let us connect to past, our history, God's protection throughout the ages. Present, God's protection and involvement, loving involvement in our lives. And God's eternal promise to us that we are connected to Him forever in this life and in the next. Sukkot, the next? Who wants to talk about the next life? Sukkot is a time of simcha. Sukkot is a time of joy. How do you talk about eternity? How do you talk about next life when at the holiday of joy? Yes, there's reason to be totally joyous because God has been with us. God is with us. And as Jews following the Torah, God will be with us eternally. Verastich li le'olam. I shall betroth you forever. With God, forever means forever. That is really something to be thrilled about and to celebrate. Wishing you and yours a joyous Sukkot. And let's take this Sukkot message of God's presence and our being enveloped in God's presence, and let that be a guiding light for us throughout this coming beautiful, joyous year. Have a beautiful, joyous Yom Tov.